the whole country looking at these brand new images from a Nest cam at the home of Nancy Guthrie from the night that she was taken from her home. Des, these images hopefully can lead police to some kind of an arrest as soon as possible.
And that is the hope, right? That gets, these photos get people thinking, and maybe they know this person. There is also some video we are trying to obtain as well to be able to share that. Maybe someone recognizes his movements, but definitely going to hopefully open things up in this case here. And we are speaking with Dan O'Shea right now this morning here on Fox 10 Talks, retired Navy SEAL. Dan, thank you so much for joining us at this hour. You have a very impressive resume, a former hostage negotiator in Iraq. But with the release of these new photos, what are your thoughts on this? What is the hope here that these do in this case?
Well, now we know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that this was an attack. We don't know if it's directly related to the kidnapping. A lot of speculation on if they were in there to kidnap her, they would have taken her meds, they would have treated her better, because that's ultimately the prize. But now we have irrefutable evidence that there was a planned attack. I see one body. I think there was two. Obviously we don't see anything beyond their eyes, and even then it's going to be limited. But this is a new lead. Someone out there will recognize some article of clothing, like you said, the height, the weight, the mannerisms. And let's hope that this can release that critical piece of information needed to bring Nancy Guthrie home to her family.
Okay, so Dan, we're going to roll. We see the pictures. We actually have the video now, the moving video. You can kind of see the guy's movements. You can see all the way down to his tennis shoes. Let's roll that. We're going to get your reaction to this in real time. He comes up. He's got boxing gloves, which, I mean, that's going to be obviously a key clue. But then the behavior gets really strange here, where I don't know if he's surprised that there's a camera. There's a backpack. That's going to be telltale. But look at this. He goes back off the porch and appears to grab a part of a bush and then uses that. Why is that in front of the camera? Thinking it can maybe block the view? I mean, that is such strange behavior. But now as you see the live images, or these, the rolling video, what's your take?
Well, obviously he knows the camera's there. He knows these things.
Did we lose Dan?
Yeah, let's go ahead and hang on, Dan. I see you're still there. Okay, the image has frozen for just a second. Des?
We'll get that working. But I mean, I definitely am so fascinated to hear what Dan has to say about this. But we're all watching this video together for the first time, right? So what I noticed or what stands out as kind of odd to me is that he, or this individual, I suppose could be he or she, but it seems as if this person is almost surprised that the doorbell camera would be there.
Right? Yeah.
If you planned through this and thought about this, I mean, there's a camera everywhere these days, and most people have a doorbell camera. It's a common thing to have. So to seem unprepared for that aspect.
Yeah, so he brings a backpack, which indicates he's plotted out this crime. But, and yet he does. He seems surprised, and how bizarre. I mean, I don't know if the guy's clearly thinking or if he's, all right. We got Dan ready to go. Dan, your first reaction. Des and I just kind of giving our first take, looking at the video. Sorry if you're hearing an echo, but go ahead and give us your first take on this.
Well, this is pretty breaking. I mean, this confirms beyond a shadow of a doubt that these individuals obviously had intent. They came prepared. They're making sure they can't leave any fingerprints behind. Their face were completely covered, and the backpack. And we can only wonder what was in that backpack. So now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, we have a suspect that, let's hope someone out there recognizes the profile. I mean, I'm not trying to rush to judgment on this. And I'm not a cop based in Arizona, but that symbol, that mask, my first reaction was cartel. And I thought that in the initial day when I heard about this, simply for the location proximity to Arizona and Mexico, the Mexican border there. So I think we now have finally another step in the case. Some of the stuff we know that law enforcement has been withholding. They probably didn't want to release this, but now with the desperation setting in after 10, 11 days, they've got to start showing us what they have to the public. So hopefully someone out there can recognize that individual body movements, article of clothing, maybe even the mask they're wearing or the boxing gloves, that someone will do the right thing and call in and report who this individual or individuals are.
And Dan, as a former hostage negotiator, if this evidence came across your desk, does this prove to be helpful to you? What are you examining this for, and how?
Well, bottom line is you have to prove. I mean, the hardest thing about starting the trail on where a hostage went is you got to figure out who grabbed them, because that's how you track, addresses, license plates, cell phones, pinging, things that ping. So all of it starts with who was responsible for those kidnapping. That's why there's been an exhaustive investigative search at the scene. But the local law enforcement FBI have been very tight-lipped. But releasing this image, I think, means that they've run through all the lists of, they have analysts, and especially the FBI, that will know articles of clothing, where was that face mask purchased, what make and model of that face mask. I have seen cartels wear similar style ski masks. So again, that's where my gut is telling me, but I'm not local law enforcement, but there's going to be a lot of clues that have already been analyzed. We know this video probably was recovered within hours of the incident itself. So they've had 10 days to go over that. Yeah. But what it tells you, if they're releasing this to public, they haven't been able to drill down and onto a lead. And that's why they're releasing this, that hopefully someone is going to recognize this individual or an article of clothing, and then help local law enforcement find the hunt to where this individual is, and ultimately hopefully bring Nancy Guthrie back home to her family safely.
So for people who are just tuning in YouTube, and we have a lot of people watching, and they really do want to get your input on this, you guys can shoot us questions in the chat box, and we'll try to get them this is Dan O'Shea, was a hostage negotiator during his time in Iraq, a retired Navy SEAL with a lot of experience dealing with situations. So would you say, Dan, that they are going to be able to, the guy looks a little on the heavy set side. I realize he's wearing, some thick clothes on a chilly night in Tucson, appears to be a little heavy set there. It looks to me, and one of our viewers was asking, are they going to be able, this is Ashley saying, can they estimate his height? And it looks like he has some facial hair. I thought so too, maybe directly above the lip and below the lip.
100%. One of the biggest kidnapping rings that we dealt with, obviously I've mentioned in previous interviews, Al-Qaeda was in the kidnapping business for a long time. We apprehended someone that was pulled out of a lineup, and this is one of those macabre where Al-Qaeda would hang the black banner behind the hostages, and then there were 3 or 4 insurgents standing behind them. One of those insurgents was taller than the others. He was a little bit more portly. He weighed well over 200 pounds. And we were able to have analysts drill down and come up with his height, his approximate weight, plus or minus 5 pounds. And ultimately, he was blacked out 100%, and his face was covered. But we were able to actually pinpoint, because of that photo forensics, we pulled him out of a lineup, and he was apprehended and brought to justice in Iraq, simply for this a very similar. In fact, this video here we're seeing gives a lot more detail than a standard photograph that we had with the guy just simply standing there like in a lineup profile. So yes, there are critical clues that can be pulled out of this. But again, this video needs to go widespread, especially in the Arizona community. So someone out there knows who this individual is and can identify them and needs to report them to local law enforcement and the FBI.
And Dan, we have so many questions for you in our chat, rightfully so, surrounding this. One of them coming in from Brandy the Bookworm. She wants to know, what is your opinion on the fact that the cutoff day has come and gone as far as the ransom, I'm assuming here, with no proof of life? What do you think of that?
Well, that's what's got everyone very concerned, and all the professionals I've been sharing these shows on, former FBI agents and law enforcement, we all think that every day this goes by, it means the odds are going away, and it's just troubling. And what's got me very concerned, this individual spent more than 40 minutes on the property and left behind these critical meds, and that alone has got everyone concerned. And they have not operated in a traditional kidnap for ransom mode. They went to the media to get this out, so not directly to the family, and they haven't tried to negotiate in good faith. If they really wanted money, they would have started a negotiation directly with Savannah Guthrie and the family. They would have literally called her cell phone or her number or reached out to her somewhere beyond going to the news media networks alone. And even if they didn't get a hold of Savannah Guthrie's personal cell, they could have reached out to her network, and they certainly would have put them in direct communication. That has not happened, which makes a lot of us concerned and worried as this drags out, because every day goes by, odds are reducing that we're going to have a happy ending here, and that's unfortunately what I think is the reality we have to start addressing.
All right, Dan, and going off of what you said, so with that being said, do you think an organized crime group could be responsible for something like this? If, like you mentioned, they spent a lot of time in the house, but they left behind the critical meds, and they're seeming, this guy here on surveillance video kind of making mistakes, going back to grab the shrub to cover the camera.
Well, that's why everyone. Well, you can tell he's prepared. He's got a mask. He's got a mask on. He looks intimidating. Anyone showing up at your house at night wearing a ski mask is up to no good, and that's the concern. And the fact that when she left the front house, she went through that same doorway, the ground, the blood on the ground. So I mean, we understand she was on blood thinners, and that can give you propensity to bleed easier than normal, but still, that was very concerning. So was it a professional kidnapping ring, or was it some thugs? Was it a robbery that went wrong? But again, they didn't steal anything from the house. So I am more and more concerned that there was evil intent in this. Just in the way the guy's dressed tells you that they had something nefarious in plan. So but again, this is a good lead. This is the first lead that's been released to the public in a few days, and hopefully this will, get something that someone will recognize and be able to report in.
Dan, we have people watching all around the world now on YouTube, and I think we've got more questions coming in. Are you able to stick with us after the break?
Oh, absolutely. No,
Okay.
This is important. I've been doing this 24/7, and I hate having to be called for this type of stuff, because this is brings back the worst struggle of 2 years of my life dealing with this. But I'm very familiar with this,
Okay.
and let's keep the questions rolling, please.
Let's take one step back as we take a look at these images, and hopefully, people are phoning in the tips out there. Somebody in Tucson, no doubt, is going to know who that guy is, whether it's based on the shoes, or the backpack, or the face mask he's wearing, or even what appears to be a gun in a holster right there in his waistband. But Dan, I wanted to get your take, just to take one step back to yesterday. There's been so much focus on the note that was dropped off at TMZ and a local television station, ransom note, with a deadline of Friday, and then secondly, a deadline of Monday. Based on your experience of how quickly hostage takers or kidnappers operate, was there anything about the way the timeline played out, and deadline number 1, and in case you don't do that one, here's deadline number 2? What was your take on all of that, and how skeptical were you right out of the chute that those notes were actually coming from the direct people involved?
Well, it's not that. It's not about the coming from what person or not. The concern is it really a kidnap for ransom? I mean, the initial demand I heard was $4 million. I've also now heard it was $1 million. I have not seen the notes. The second note that was released, which reportedly has not been released to the media, was $6 million. But again, the way kidnapping normally works, they make direct communication. They establish bona fides that they're actually talking to the family, and that the family is talking to, or the company, or the country, the leadership of the country is talking to the kidnappers directly. Because again, a lot of the crazies will come out, and you have to presume that some crazy ransom demands, especially the Bitcoin ones, are going to come from just random folks who think maybe I can make a quick buck fast. So because none of the previous ransom demands had proof of life, I thought it meant that it's suspect that the individuals sending these messages, they may be affiliated with the kidnapping individuals, but they're probably not the individuals themselves. And then there were some other clues. They asked for in USD and US dollars, which, anyone in the U.S. would be like, you don't have to say that. It's too obvious, which led people to think maybe these kidnappers or whoever's sending these notes is from overseas, which, again, you have to look at the border. And you have to look at who has a propensity for violence that's going to be aggressive enough to draw blood on an 84-year-old woman. And again, my mind keeps going in dark spaces, and it keeps going towards the cartel and towards Mexico. And like I said, a lot of clues are going to come out of that video that's just been aired, and let's hope it leads somewhere. But this is a new development, but it confirms that whoever went to go grab her had malicious intent. And the way he's dressed, the backpack, the gloves, and more importantly, the ski mask, those are all just telltale signs.
Yeah, and we're seeing clearly from these images, which are very clear, right? I mean, these are nice, crisp images. You can see what he's wearing. You can clearly see the backpack. We can even see the gun, and even better so in the video. And we are getting some talk, Dan, in the chat. Some folks are saying they see a mustache hair or, facial hair, potentially thick eyebrows. But then we have another questioning, well, how do we know this is a man, or can we make that assumption? So what clues from this person's stature, build, the way they're moving, can indicate, this is a man, this is a woman?
Well, all those are, they're going to have people looking at that, and they're going to be someone has already determined the height and weight of this individual, without question. And probably, hopefully, when they went back and did that extensive forensic sweep a couple of days ago, they were able to collect more information, more details. But again, the kidnappers, you can say it was a bungled home invasion or whatnot, but they were smart enough to know they did not want to leave prints behind. And had they left definitive prints, then there would have been a lead that would have been followed up. And if we're believing what the law enforcement has been putting out up to this morning, including the FBI, that there were no persons of interest still on the list. So now we have a person of interest and an image of that individual. Hopefully this is going to lead somewhere for everyone, and most importantly, a flood of tips and whatnot coming into the tips line.
Okay, so one of our most loyal everyday viewers, Sherry, Nevada Pup, is asking, can you ask, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but can you tell us why they waited 10 days to put these photos and videos out? Would it have taken that long to process this, to get it back from whether they were working with Nest or something along those lines? Or is there something about the timeline that yesterday at 5 p.m. was the deadline, and now they feel comfortable enough putting the video out there? Which side would you come down on that?
Well, listen, they never give out information. And I know being on the backside of this, you had to be very careful about how much information you would release to the families and whatnot over the course of this for obvious reasons. The challenge was, I heard initially that they got nothing off that camera. There was, quote, movement. It could have been an animal. That was the story for the last 10 days. So that, so everyone presumed there's no guarantee that they got any video, and that the fact, quote, she didn't pay the monthly bill, so that the Nest organization wanted to have a video record of these individuals. And now all of a sudden, 10 days later, boom, we're seeing the guy who was responsible. I mean, let's just be honest. That gentleman is responsible for the abduction. Was he alone? We don't know yet, but we now have a visual suspect. Now, for 10 days, we weren't told there was anything of note from that video. So what it tells me, they went back out to do a complete forensic scrub, 4 days ago, 3-4 days ago. That probably ended up, they didn't get anything out of it. So now they're like, okay, let's release this video and see what else. So they've been very clear that the law enforcement local, until the FBI showed up, they've been running into dead ends. And I think the fact that they're now releasing this video shows that they're like, let's see if we can get someone to put in more information. We know that hundreds, if not thousands, of phone calls have come into the hotline. Those calls are probably dried up. So this is going to be an effort to re-energize those tip lines and hopefully get leads that are going to come in, because this is a pretty substantial development. And they probably were holding, I guarantee the other caveat, they were withholding this video until that 5 p.m. suspension came and went, because they didn't want to jeopardize the case. Because just put yourself in the mind of the bad guy. Your deadline's coming to 5 o'clock. You're hoping, waiting for the money to get wired by that Bitcoin account. And lo and behold, your now image is on the screen, and you're now sitting there scared. What are you going to do? And I know this from my experience in Iraq. The Americans did not negotiate. We did not do a lot of hostage negotiation. All the families and countries and others that I advised on, quote, hostage negotiations were either local Iraqis or foreign nationals, like the French, the Germans, the Italians. But the U.S., we weren't going to negotiate with hostages. We were going to hunt them down and take them out. And if the bad guys knew we were coming or had intel on them, they would go to ground and sometimes, presumably, kill the hostage, bury the hostage, and then get out of Dodge. So that's another reason why this image was held up for as long as it was. But we've reached that crossroads. We're past that 5 p.m. deadline, and the case is probably going cold a little bit. So that's why that image was released, to hopefully generate new leads.
Right, and that makes sense, right? You're telling the public, oh, we don't know if we caught movement, but we don't have an image. Is that in hopes that the captor, who this person is on video, maybe potentially makes a mistake because they're thinking, well, you know what? They have no clue. They have not a clue as to, who I could potentially be. Also, Dan, in your experience, we have some more. Well, let's get to some more questions in the chat. There are so many.
I'll jump in with one right here, Des. So Jennifer is saying, I'm going to kind of forward her question, which is, let's think about this for a second. 10 days in a row now, law enforcement has said there were no images. Software detected that there might have been a person. And so Jennifer is making the point, holy cow, they are probably in the last 30 minutes suddenly realizing they are caught on camera and they may be easily identifiable. What, based on your experience, if this was a larger organization or if it was just a lone kidnapper slash hostage taker, what would that person be like, literally hopping in the car and try to get as far away as possible? Or do you think maybe they've already left town?
Well, I believe, again, my gut now, even especially after seeing that image, so first off, if it was a robbery and money was intended and it was a lone wolf, they would have grabbed everything out of the house and they would have left. They might have beat the woman up or that kind of thing, which drew the blood, but it would have been a home invasion. Get what you can, then go. I've always been of the suspicion in the last 10 days that those hostage demands were really to spin up a bunch of red herrings, get the cops and law enforcement going off in different directions to let me get away, put time and space. But now, as that reader just wrote in and submitted that question, his image, that guy now knows, holy crap, even though it's not a clear photo of him, image of him, it's enough where, again, his height and weight, that the mustache, someone's going to recognize something. Someone who knows him is going to see a slice screenshot and go, I think that is this guy. So and now he's running scared. And that's probably why they didn't do it before the 5 p.m. deadline, because it's a game of like, how much do we escalate this? And at the forefront is why hostage takings are so challenging, is that you've got a live hostage and you don't want to scare the kidnappers enough to think, let's cut our losses and bury the evidence and get out of here. And that's why they're in such a challenging position to release intelligence like that.
Dan,
early on, before they've exhausted all the leads.
Mm-hmm. Dan, we only have like a minute left. Your quick answer, because it's come up a couple times. Folks are wondering, do you believe she's still alive?
Listen, my gut tells me something, but my heart tells me something else. I'm going to continue to pray for her, as we all need to, and let's not give up on hope. Mm-hmm. Be prepared for the worst, but let's not give up on hope. You never can give up on hope.
All right, this is Dan O'Shea. We've been talking to a retired Navy SEAL with years of hostage negotiating experience. We're hoping that we could spend some time talking about your time serving overseas in the U.S. military in dealing with the worst of the worst there in Iraq with some of the terrorist organizations that were there. But Dan, your perspective has been outstanding. It does, I think, fill in some of the blanks, and let's just hope by this time tomorrow we can announce an arrest.
Let's hope so. Let's keep the prayers going up for Miss Nancy Guthrie and the Guthrie family as a whole.
Absolutely. Dan,
Okay.
thank you. We appreciate your time today.
Absolutely, and you guys, we can talk about Iraq sometime. I'm writing a book about that now, and these are compelling stories, and they need to be shared because it's lessons learned in all these stories.
Yes,
Thank
we'll have
you,
you on
Dan.
again soon. Thanks, Dan.
Yep.